What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we have an extra special guest. Somebody I really love. He's a really cool dude, and he's been in the game making music and DJing for a long time. His name is Flosstradamus, aka Curt. If you've ever listened to trap music or any kind of hip-hop electronic music, you've probably heard of Flosstradamus. He is a well-established American DJ and producer, currently based in Los Angeles. Curt has collaborated with major artists, including Major Lazer, Matt and Kim, A-Trak, Baauer, and many others. In the past few years, he's collaborated with many hip-hop legends, including G.T.A, Lil Jon, Waka Flocka Flame, Malone. The list goes on and on. In addition to being a producer and DJ, Curt has been a recent influencer in the crypto and NFT space, developing his own smokeable vape tied to an NFT using blockchain technology. He also presented at the 2022 NFT LA conference and started a company called LBRATD, LBRATD, building blockchain technology, helping other artists connect with fans using NFTs. I think this is probably one of my favorite episodes. We get to chat about a lot of different random things, including what it's like having surround sound speakers in Flosstradamus' couch. He shares a lot of his music background. He talks about a lot of different interesting music production hacks using Ableton Live, including some new live feature recommendations. He also shares some of his favorite plugins and software and really fun stories in the studio. Before we jump into the episode, I wanted to give a huge thanks to all of you out there supporting the podcast. So because I've just received so much love and support from this podcast from all of you listeners, I wanted to give back. So I partnered with several other really great companies I love to give away up to $6,000 in free software and gear from the companies Output, Loop Community, Blease, and SonarWorks. There are going to be 5 different winners, so your chances of winning are pretty awesome. And you can learn more details and enter to win by going to liveproducersonline.com/win. That's liveproducersonline.com/win. Go check out the details there. There's a bunch of different ways you can enter. Also, make sure you guys check back on Tuesdays for new episodes. And without wasting any more time, let's jump into this episode with Curt, aka Flosstradamus.
What up?
It's beautiful. What are you drinking?
Currently drinking a Topo Chico.
Topo Chico, what is that?
Oh, it's like the best soda water ever. I'm sure that anyone listening will agree. Oh, yes. Out of all the soda waters, I've had them all. This is the best one.
That's a big statement, dude, because I'm a soda water connoisseur of sorts. So
You've never had Topo Chico?
I have not. Is that like a West Coast thing?
Well, they're from Mexico. They're from like Monterrey, Mexico.
Okay.
But definitely you got to get on it, man. It's like the best.
This is why I do this podcast, to learn stuff like this.
Yes.
It's important.
That's all. This is the only plugin you need is Topo Chico.
Topo Chico. It'll make all your music better, really.
It definitely does.
Have you ever heard of Liquid Death, speaking of water?
Yeah, they're super dope. I really like them. I think the branding is amazing behind that whole thing.
It's a funny brand for sure. Yeah. Like it's all about like murdering your thirst. And
there's this like post-COVID health revival for a lot of people, even like touring musicians and stuff. They're like, yeah, no, bro, I don't drink anymore. I do whatever now. And like, but I think that Liquid Death is perfect for those type of people. It looks like you're holding a can of beer, like you're ready to party, but you're just like chilling and being healthy. So it's great branding.
This is definitely true. Like, I know for me personally, I've been exercising more and try to get on the health kick, like post-COVID and everything.
I love it, man.
You did a lot of dope streams during COVID as well.
Yeah.
I saw, what was it called? I actually watched some of it the other day, and I saw it live too, the Park and Rave live stream, like in 2020. That was a dope show.
That was the last, I think they did one other Park and Rave after that, but they were doing them all through the pandemic, and I was like the second to last before we came back to what we're doing now again, back to real life. So yeah, it was cool, man. We did a 2-day festival around 420, and it was my first of those ever Park and Rave experiences, and it was cool. Kids were like bringing inflatable couches and grills, and we're just like hanging out. It was like a totally different experience than like a normal music festival. Yeah,
definitely. Like the whole idea and concept of doing drive-in shows was really fascinating. Like Mark Ribier, I think, was the very first person to do it.
Oh yeah, dude.
And he's hilarious. Like,
dude, he's so good. So talented. Talented, yeah.
That's what makes it so great. Is like he's funny, but also he's a great musician and just like brings it into the comedy. Have you seen his new TV show with Amazon on their Twitch channel?
I just see the clips that he's posted online, but I really want to check it out.
Dude, it's hilarious. He had Tenacious D on last night, and they played Twister.
So it's so ridiculous, but it's fun. That's what a show should be. It doesn't have to be serious.
Yeah, right.
It's cool.
Exactly, man. So, okay, remind me, where do you live? Because I know you grew up in Chicago, right?
Yeah. So, I grew up, I was born in Kalamazoo, Michigan. So I was born just outside of Chicago.
Okay.
Kalamazoo is actually halfway between Detroit and Chicago, like the exact middle point. Mm-hmm. So I grew up there, kind of had a little bit of techno influence from Detroit, house from Chicago, and then I moved to Chicago in 2000 to 2010. So I was there for a while. I currently live in Los Angeles, but I lived in New York for 8 years in between that. So I've been all over the States, all the big cities.
I grew up in Ohio, and I'm in Indianapolis now, moving to Denver. And and so, yeah, I've been to Chicago for so many shows. It's a fun scene out there, man. I love Chicago. It's a special place in my heart. In Kalamazoo. Kalamazoo, what is that? Bell's Two Hearted? It's my number one beer, dude. That's from Kalamazoo, right?
It is, man. Oh, it's so good. All of the Bell's beers, too. They have like a bunch of other ones, an eccentric ale and... what's the other one I always drink?
Dogfish Head?
Yeah, well, there's so many. And the cool thing is at the brewery, they're always changing different local ones too. Yeah. Actually, it's probably one of the biggest microbrews in the entire United States. And they didn't sell out to any big company, and they just recently sold to like another giant microbrew thing. So now they're finally not all in-house like they were, but they're so good.
Yeah, I appreciate a good crisp beer on a summer day.
Yes.
I also saw, speaking of like your chandelier and house and like favorite things, were you sponsored by Lovesack? I saw your couch video on Instagram and I was like jealous, and now I'm inspired to buy a couch when I move.
Yo, I mean,
probably a Lovesack.
The funny thing is that they did kind of sponsor. They hooked me up. They wanted to have like some musicians like kind of check out this couch that they did, and so it's a couch with speakers inside of it. It's wild. There's like a subwoofer. It's like all Harman. It's like Harman Kardon 5.1 surround sound. It's cool. Like when you play Fortnite and stuff, like you can hear steps walking behind you, and like when someone shoots you, there's bass.
That's amazing.
But it's funny because I'm kind of promoting it now, but they just hooked me up. Like just to get musicians to see what it was all about, but I highly recommend it. It's cool, and it's like all modular too. So if you end up moving into a spot that's really small, you can like Lego it together however you want.
Especially if you're moving into like a smaller space or spaces issue, like Lovesack. They say that it's guaranteed for life. Like a lot of couches you toss after like 5 to 10 years or whatever.
Yeah.
Apparently these last forever.
I didn't know that. That's cool. Like IKEA couches are made out of balsa wood and they'll break after a year or whatever, but these ones, I didn't know that I have the guarantee. That's awesome. Yeah,
like IKEA, anything you purchase furniture-wise is like deciphering a bomb, because it comes in like 6,000 pieces, and like you have to put it perfectly together with like shit instructions.
Yeah, it's like borderline cardboard. It's almost that.
Dude, have you like leaving an IKEA is like half the challenge, really, because like when you walk in, it's a maze, and you have to like spend 4 hours finding your way out.
Yes. And if you go in with a significant other, there's probably chances are that you will end in a breakup by the time you like hit the checkout aisle. It's crazy. It will always happen.
I almost had that experience. That's actually pretty funny.
It's part of the maze. If you can make it out like still as a couple, you win. Like it's
like free counseling basically. You just like
it's
like awesome.
Like how couples have the trouble of like deciding what to eat. Like you have to do that throughout this whole maze that gets so confusing over and over and over again. And it just gets to the point where you're just like, oh,
it's not worth it.
It puts a relationship to the test. IKEA is like the test to know. Like people say going on a road trip is that, but I think IKEA is like the ultimate test of a relationship.
It's guaranteed stress. As a road trip could be an easy if there's no trip, you know.
Yeah, it's true.
So share a little bit about maybe your background with music for people who don't know you super well.
Yeah.
Just maybe talk about how did you get into that, and then eventually into Ableton. Obviously, it's the Ableton podcast.
No, I'd love to talk about Ableton in it too. So, I mean, I barely talk about my beginning days, so it's kind of cool. We'll talk about that. So like I said a minute ago, I grew up in Kalamazoo, Michigan, right in between Detroit and Chicago. And in the 90s, I'm 40 now, so I'm a little older. And I was part of the... Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was part of the first rave scene that was like out in the 90s. So I was like 16 through 18 during that time. And so in the Midwest, there was huge parties in Chicago, huge parties in Detroit, but in Kalamazoo, we had kind of like this mix of both. So there was techno, drum and bass, house, stuff like that. I started out as a turntablist first and foremost. I got 2 crappy Technics turntables from just from like a pawn shop. That had that. But the cool thing is that this mixer I got was this old Gemini mixer that had like a 15-second sampler on it. So I used to like kind of like beat juggle and try to scratch, I was like a young kid just trying to figure out the scratching side of things. But I used to sample just random loops from these old vinyl records. My dad has a thrift store, and I kind of grew up in like that storage wars situation. He would buy storage units, clean them out, then resell it in his thrift store. So I would always get cool vinyl and also like cool VCRs and weird tech that I used to just like hack together, like make my own video mixtapes, but then also do the same thing with audio. I would like take these records and sample them in the sampler.
That's cool.
I ended up translating that to a computer. My parents got some like Pentium 2 computer, and I got a sound card for it, and I started recording into that. And what I first started using was Cool Edit Pro, which I think is called, Adobe owns it now, and it's called like Adobe Audition, I think.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So, but back in the day it was Cool Edit Pro, and you could like kind of sample and chop and loop in that. And so I started making beats in that. Then that took me into Acid Music, and I was using Sony Acid for a while on my PC.
Yeah.
And I was producing a bunch of back in the 90s. It was like called Jungle, but it's drum and bass. I would take like Lil Jon acapellas and like Timbaland and 3-6 Mafia and stuff. I was taking those loops and putting like drum and bass beats over the top of them. And that was kind of my first exploration into music. And the thing I liked about Cool Edit Pro is you could like pitch the samples. You could transpose them really easily. Everything stayed in time. For me, it was really cool. I could sample in a DAW in a way that felt like I was sampling on my sampler, pitch it up, do all those things. It was like my main DAW for a while. And then eventually, one of my friends, it was like Ableton 4, I think.
Yeah.
It was 4, 100% 4. He was like, I'm doing this thing with my live show. And he was like showing me how he did it. And then he would show me the transpose knob in Ableton. And I was like, wait, you can just like push up and down and transpose and like and pitch your samples. And I was like, whoa, this is like what I was used to in Cool Edit Pro. And that was kind of my first, I don't know, toes dipping into Ableton. And I really liked it. It still felt a little foreign. Like when, I don't know if you've ever switched to DAW or if anyone listening switch DAWs, your hands are kind of crossed at first. You're like, it feels familiar. There's certain things I like, but it was a little off.
Yeah.
And I started using that for a little bit, and then I started using Reason. I switched over to Reason for a little bit, and I bought an MPC, and I was using MPCs for a bit, like just a straight up MPC 2000 at first. Then I upgraded to 2000 XL, MIDI'd into Reason, and that was like my main setup for a while. And then I sold all that because I got broke. I kind of got out of dance music for a little bit too. I was just like, wasn't making anything, took a few years off.
Yeah.
And then...
How long ago was that? Like, I'm just curious, timeline.
I was doing the music stuff from probably like 96 through 2001.
Okay.
So that was kind of me just like dabbling around. And I always played around with it. I went to school for design and coding. Like I'm a big tech nerd, and we can touch that later. But
we will.
I definitely was like, I was going to school for the tech stuff. Music was always side. It was just a fun thing to do. But I was going to school, I was getting broke, so I had to sell almost all my music equipment. And then for some reason, I just stepped away from dance music. Like there was some weird shady promoters that happened. The rave scene was getting weird in like the early 2000s. And I was living in Chicago at that time. It just got weird. I was like, I need to step away from this. And I got away from the whole dance scene. But the reason why I'm going to this timeline is when I got back into it again, my friends were like, oh, you know how to DJ? And I had a bunch of friends that we're just throwing these like fun little house parties and warehouse parties and stuff. And like, oh, you're our friend that knows how to DJ. And so I started DJing again with vinyl. And then back in the day, there was a Serato predecessor called Final Scratch. And it was a way you could like DJ MP3s on your computer, DJ MP3s with vinyl from your computer, just like Serato is now.
Final Scratch. I've never heard of that, really.
So Final Scratch, I'm such an old head. This is such an old head.
It's cool, man. This is a good history lesson.
So Final Scratch was the predecessor to Traktor. So Final Scratch was like some DIY company. They made it. It was this giant puck. It was a round thing you plugged RCAs into, and you could control MP3s of vinyl. And so I was using that. And then I ended up, instead of going to Traktor, I ended up going to Serato after that. But the cool thing with Final Scratch was I could play songs from my computer for the first time ever. All the music that I made that I could never really play out before unless I pressed it on like vinyl, I could actually start playing from my computer in 2003, 2002. And I loved it. It was like so next level for me. So then I was like, well, I'm going to start making my own DJ edits and mashups and I don't know, I started producing again. And that's when I came back to Ableton. And for me, Ableton was just like the perfect tool that I could take all of these acapellas and other people's songs and like make these edits, these mashups and things like that. And so I was Ableton from then on for when it comes to doing the mashup side of things.
Yeah.
I'll finish up a little bit here. I went over to Logic for a while and we started actually making a lot of like what you know for the EDM trap stuff in Logic.
Really?
I really loved mixing in Logic. Like the way you can mix, it just sounded bigger to me.
I agree. I actually am Logic Pro certified because I did a lot of mixing in Logic for that reason.
Cool. I don't know why. There's got to be just some psychological thing, but like even to me, it just felt like it was louder, better. I could do more with it. I don't know, but like I was Logic 9, and then when Logic 10 came out, that's when I came back to Ableton, and I think I came back at 8 again. Intro to Ableton was 4, and then I hopped back in at 6 for a little bit, 6 and 7, and then stepped away Logic, and then came back in at 8. And so that's my Ableton journey, and that's kind of my music journey.
Yeah. That's a good story. Now that I'm thinking about like all the things you said with your history of like sampling, I think that really translate into a lot of the music that I hear you make, because you've done a lot with like vocal chops, vocal samples, just like taking sounds and mashing them up and doing a lot of weird edits with samples and vocals, especially.
Yes.
Yeah, it sounds like a long history in the evolution of Flosstradamus.
Yeah.
There's a lot of software that you've learned over the years for sure.
Definitely a huge nerd, and we'll go down that road, I'm sure, throughout this podcast. I'm a big nerd. I love new technology. Like I'm super embracing technology. I'm beta testing and helping with a lot of products. Ableton is one of them. I'm on the beta team, and some of the stuff I've even suggested in the past is now implemented in some of the new Ableton. I don't know if it's my doing, but some of these things I've suggested before, even in the forums or to the people when I have one-on-one. So like, I love that. I'm a huge nerd with all this.
Me too. Do you remember any like specific features that you wanted, that you recommended, that ended up happening later?
Yes. What was one thing I do want is I want you guys to make a dynamic EQ. Like I made like a little like thing where it'd be cool to have just the EQ8 with dynamic EQ in it. Yep. And then there was something that I did suggest in the Ableton forum, and then it got bumped up, and then it is an 11. So I don't know. I don't know if it's my doing or I don't know. Someone voted or stole the idea, but it's in there.
Do you use a dynamic EQ right now? Do you have a favorite plugin for that? Because I think that's really important, really, for preserving frequencies, but also being able to control specific ones.
So now that you said what was the thing that I implemented, so real quick, I'll go back to that. So I suggested, I don't know if you remember in 10, it might have been in 10 or 9, I don't know, but you couldn't sidechain from the actual instrument. You'd have to actually route through and sidechain. Yeah. There wasn't an option to sidechain on the actual plugin. Yeah. And so I was like, why can't we do this? Like, it's on the compressor. Why can't we add it to other devices? And like, I everything I do and I suggested for Ableton, I've like photoshopped a version of that together. And like, I photoshopped a version of what the sidechain would be, and also sidechaining third-party plugins through the internally in Ableton. I was like, it'd be cool if you guys could just do a drop-down menu and pick what you want to sidechain.
That was a game changer.
Definitely an implemented thing later on. I don't know if it was my doing or them, but it definitely was like a thing that really helps, because you used to have to make a new track, and it just was like a little bit of a backwards way of doing what we needed, just like with one click.
Well, honestly, pretend it was only because of you. And
yes, yeah, exactly.
So thank you for that.
Spam the comments that I thought of it. And then to what you were saying too with the dynamic EQ, that would be cool if EQ8 is just regular EQ8. You can do all the cuts, whatever you want, but you can like right click on it and make band dynamic. Yep. And then you can pull down. And then also on the left-hand side, there could be that little sidechain feature as well. What is going to come in, what is going to affect that band that you're doing the sidechain with would be great. So,
well, I don't know if I'm at liberty to say this, but there may or may not be a dynamic EQ that's already being worked on or thought about by the Ableton team.
Let's go.
I don't want to speak out of turn, but I've heard rumors. Okay. So I don't know when or if, but I know it's been in the thought process, and the team has looked into it. So
a little Ableton alpha here while we're on the chat. I love it.
I don't know.
Hey, I'm not saying anything. If you Google my username Flosstradamus in the beta forums, if anyone is listening who's on the beta forums, you'll see my little Photoshop version of what I have envisioned the dynamic EQ looking like. So
that's awesome. Yeah. I think everybody would love to have that.
Yeah, it's just a one simple little feature, but yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I do know that with the new beta, they're redoing the original OG Ableton reverb.
Ooh.
So I just saw that in like a post.
I saw it on Instagram or something too. It's like they redid the reverb, and it actually has a good. I didn't hear it, but it has a really good aesthetic to it. I love the way it looks.
Yes.
Like it isn't just knobs and like a couple cuts. It like actually has a good vibe to it. But I'm sure sound wise it's even better too.
And the hybrid reverb sounds fantastic in 11.
Oh my God. I love that. Yes.
Me too.
It's so dope. Yeah.
Me too. Hey everybody, real quick, just wanted to let you know this episode is sponsored by Lander. Whether you're a beat maker, a seasoned veteran, or dreamer who is ready to take the first leap, Lander's suite of tools will guide you through every stage of the journey. I've enjoyed using Lander's products and services, especially their mastering services. Their AI mastering is actually even better now than I think it was years ago, so definitely give it a try if you're interested. Lander Studio also provides access to the entire Lander platform, which includes plugins like Vocal Align Project 5 and Lander FX Suite, monthly mastering and sample credits, unlimited distribution, unlimited file storage for your projects, and remote collaboration tools. If you're interested, Lander Studio only starts at $12.50 a month. If you choose their annual plan for 12 months, you can save 15% on their studio or mastering services with the coupon code GETLANDERLIVE15 off. So that's GETLANDERLIVE15 off, all capital letters. Check out the link in the show notes to grab that sweet deal. I've used some of Lander's services. They're really dope. Check them out. Go to the link in the show notes or go to Lander, LANDR.com. That's LANDR, Lander.com. Once again, use that discount code, all capital letters, GETLANDER, LANDR, live 15 off. Go support them for making awesome products and supporting this podcast. And back to today's episode. Cool, man. I mean, we're already on the subject of Ableton. So, like, you started in 4. That's kind of when you really got into it, which is a long time ago. So you've been in it for a long time, way before me. I got in around 8. As far as like other Ableton devices, like do you have any other go-tos that you really love to use on a regular basis? What do you use them for?
Yeah, and I've listened to this podcast before, but I just feel like, I don't know, maybe people have said this, but like OTT is like the one. Like, I don't know. Like, it's like, I mean, of course they make third-party ones because of what it is, but like, if I were to like put all my sessions into a thing and see what my most used plugin is, of course it's going to be OTT. It's on everything. It's like on so many different things. Yeah. So I'm trying to think what I use over OTT the most. I mean, other than EQ8 is like my ultimate. I don't know if they're going to up the quality in EQ8, especially if they do the dynamic, but I love it because it's just so simple and I use it all the time. But it'd be cool if they like made it a little bit. I know they have oversampling, but like, I still feel like there's a little bit of a quality thing that happens with it, especially if you like duplicate 100 of them. There's like a weird phasing thing that happens sometimes. So
sure,
I'm hoping they update the quality of it so we can just like, I can just use that as my go-to. Like sometimes I'll reach to like Pro Q or whatever to like do something, and which is cool and all, but I really want to just use all Ableton eventually at some point. Like a couple of third-party things, but like all just Ableton internal stuff.
Yeah. Well, I can't speak super intelligently on this, but just using my ears, I noticed a difference between 10 to 11, and I saw that they did some stuff with the sound engine. So I think as far as like the fidelity or quality goes, I think 11 does sound cleaner with its EQ8, but it just could be the overall upgrade. And you actually mentioned this, a pro tip for people who didn't know, that you can just right click on the EQ8 device and choose oversampling. It doesn't really tax your computer, I feel like, that much more.
No. And I'm sorry, I have another pro tip for the phasing too. If you make your default rack not have all the bands in it, so if you remove all the bands, so it's just flat or maybe just a low cut is the only thing that's on, it actually helps with phasing too. I don't know why, just having a band on, I've noticed if I like super duplicate it, it's like phasey. I don't know if there's what's going on with that, but
interesting.
It's such a subtle thing. All of these things kind of don't matter, but it's just something to think about.
I mean, honestly, the little things sometimes add up to be the most important later on. So I'm into it.
And the little things used improperly, like doing like 100 OTTs or whatever, or like can do some cool things. Like there's a lot of cool tricks you can do by just like going too crazy. Like I think us as producers, I don't know if you're guilty of it, but I am. Like I'm not supposed to do this. I read it on a forum or I saw it on a tweet or whatever. It's like you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this. And when I'm in the middle of working, it stops my workflow subconsciously. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I should do that. But like try to do the opposite always. Like, okay,
Right.
if you're not supposed to if you're not supposed to, I don't know, like high cut or whatever, like just do the opposite, see what happens, and maybe it'll like actually take your song and your sound in a different direction.
Dude, that's a great tip too, because like I feel like some of my favorite moments like producing are when I'm not thinking and I'm just doing weird stuff I wouldn't normally do.
Yes.
Like and that's the happy accidents come out, and that's what we live for.
Yes, man. Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'll say one other thing, because you did ask, but like probably my other go-to plugin is Drum Bus, and back on the happy accident side of things, it's called Drum Bus. So people are like, oh, I'm just going to put it on my drums. Of course, it sounds great on drums. It's big, but you can put it on a lot of different things to give it a nice fat saturation. Mm-hmm. And I'll just use it on whatever, leads, things like that. And even though it has the name drum in it, use that on anything. It does really cool compression. It just does things in a little bit different way. And it's only a few knobs, so it's kind of fun just to play with it and see what can come out of it.
Yeah, and just using it as a saturator too. Like if I pull down the drive and just like pull everything down except for just turn up the crunch. Yeah, it could be a nice little saturation tool.
Oh yeah, dude. Ableton saturation is really good too. The saturator and like so good.
Do you have a favorite flavor of Ableton saturator? Because I know there's like analog, there's soft,
it's the default, whatever one that is. It's analog. I forgot which one's the first one, but like I barely click through the other ones unless I'm doing like a clipping type thing where I'll do like the harder modes, like if I need it to be a clipper. But usually I'll just use the glue compressor with nothing. Like it just runs through, but then I'll just click the soft clip on it, and that's usually my clipper most of the time.
Okay.
But yeah.
KJ Saka really turned me on to like just using the glue compressor as my main limiter. And you just like change it to a 10-to-1 ratio, and then just like you can leave the threshold where it's at, and then just turn up the makeup gain with the soft clip on, and then just like softly redline, and I just use that as my main limiter now for pretty much everything.
Yeah, someone told me it's probably not actually this, but there's like a hidden limiter in Ableton. So even if you're going through your master and hitting red, there's some sort of limiting that's happening behind the scenes or whatever. Or you could even just go through no processing, just zero processing on your master. And even if it is red, if it sounds good, it's good, but it's doing some sort of clipping in there somewhere, apparently. I don't know.
Really?
I don't know. It's a mystery. My friend told me that it's like it's like a hidden limiter. There's like a hidden thing in there. I'm like, I don't know if it's hidden, but it might just be the way that the like the 32-bit float or whatever is like catching the peaks. I don't know. Whatever is happening is.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I'm always making DJ edits. Like I have 5 bajillion DJ edits, but I'm always doing those. And a lot of times when you put 2 tracks together, it's going to clip. But most of the time, all my DJ edits, I'm rendering out with no limiting and anything like that on it. Because when I do limit it, it loses energy. And then when I'm just like rendering it out as is, it sounds good. It's weird. There might be some distortion happening, but it still sounds good. If I were to limit, it would sausage it out and lose some of the dynamics and lose some of the beef of whatever it is. But if I just let it run through Ableton, no limiting, it still has like some sort of depth to it. I don't know how to explain it. It's something I've heard by being of just like limiting with like a Pro L or something or not. And this is only in DJ edit mode. When I'm mixing my songs, I do different techniques, but this is just like, all right, I'm cranking out a quick DJ edit. I'm going to do it. And I notice when I Pro L them, or when I do some sort of limiting, it just loses the power of just like letting the 2 tracks super redline. I don't know why. Okay.
I got you. I was thinking more of like mashup in the sense that you were like adding new instruments and stuff, but you're just taking a DJ edit, you're a fully mastered song and chopping it and then but I'll also layer them multiple times, and we can get into my DJ edit process too. I'd love to talk about that, but like I'm also stacking a bunch of edits and doing different things. But that's kind of what I mean is like even though there's 2 tracks that are going, and maybe there is a little bit of something I'm doing to clean up between the 2, they are pushing so hard that the red is hitting. But I don't really limit it to bring it back down. I just kind of let it bounce out of Ableton fully red, and it doesn't sound as bad as if I were to then squish those 2 things that are actually overpowering. Yeah. Do you ever use any kind of source separation tool to like extract, say if you can't get the stems from the artist, do you use anything like that?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So we can go down that road. I'm like, my favorite one, I think, is just RX8, like the Isotope RX. I do that all the time. I'll try to make acapellas and instrumentals too, because some EDM songs might have like a build-up vocal, like turn up, whatever. And if I'm making an edit and I like the breakdown of it, and then the build-up is happening and I don't want the vocal of it, I'll actually take that song, do the vocal removal, and just use the build-up from that where there's like a vocal over the top of it, and make it so it's like a newer version of it if I can't get the stems. And it works. Also, another little secret is Isotope has a thing called Master Rebalance, which is like the biggest tool I'm always using in my edits all the time. So like, I'll even just put that on and pull the vocals down. There's like a vocal thing that'll make your vocals come down or come up. Because a lot of times I'm like using hip hop vocals or beats or whatever, and they're mixed in a way that is like the vocals are kind of squished in there. So I'll do a thing maybe where I'll turn the bass down a little bit and like turn up the vocals, and then I'll have like the little EDM thing that's like part of the drop coming in, like just to kind of make it poke out over all of that. But Isotope stuff is so dope.
I like Rebalance because it does give you that control of like adjusting how much you want to take in and out. And it only gives you like 4 stems basically, right? It's vocals, bass, drums. We've talked about this on the podcast before. There's a new service that actually recently sponsored the podcast. I'm not saying this just because they paid me, but like I love their service. It's a lolol.ai.
Yep. Yeah.
And
they're
I don't know if you've played with them, but they make it easy just to pull like the whole thing out, just vocals or drums.
My friend and I get in an argument. He says that that's the best out. The algorithm that they have is the best.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm always doing edits on a plane, and I'm always like, or whatever. I'm doing them in random spots where I don't have the internet. So it's like, I'm just so used to just going to RX, making it happen. There was another one, Acon Digital makes a thing called, what is it called? Oh no. There's another one that does it too, that I was using for a while, but just the Isotope RX8 is like just the best for me.
It's good.
Quickest. Yeah, quick and dirty, done. And then Isotope Master Rebalance if I'm just in the DAW and I need to make it happen real quick.
Yeah. No, I've used it too. It's great. Isotope just in general is dope. Like their CTO, Jonathan Bailey, was on the podcast and talked a little bit about it, the tech behind that. He's a smart dude. So another brainwave.
Oh my God. Their stuff is always next level. And they're also taking maybe trends that other people are doing in the industry and then improving on them and making them even better. And like, also their interfaces are good. It's just that there's so much about it that just feels comfortable. I love all their stuff.
Same, me too, man.
I'll give since we're talking clipping, I'll give a little tip, a little secret clipper tip. It's I believe it's Isotope Ozone 5. It might be 6, it has it too, but just the maximizer, aka their limiter, if you just pull up that unit and there's a soft clip mode in it, you just hit the soft clip mode. If you actually mix into that, if you just put that on your master and just mix into that, don't adjust anything, and you hear it audibly clipping, because you will hear it clip through that. That's a good, because of this weird Ableton thing that like you can clip and you can kind of not hear it in Ableton without a limiter. If you do it with that soft clipper, it actually makes it so you can really tell if your track is going to clip once it gets limited in mastering. So I'll just put that on and I'll mix through that a lot of times. And if I'm hearing distortion, I need to go and like clean some things up in my mix just by using the 5 soft clipper. It doesn't, in the newer versions of Isotope, it doesn't have it. But that clipper with that soft mode is just like it's like the little hack just to make sure your stuff isn't clipping.
I'm so happy to hear you say that, because like your music sounds great and you've been doing it way longer than I have, obviously. But I just started doing that exact same thing, mixing into clipping the glue compressor on the master. And that's with the soft clip on. So it's the same concept, just a different plugin. Yeah.
But what I do then is I remove it after that. Like, so I'll clip into it to hear it, to make sure it's good, but I don't bounce through that. I just like, I'll remove it. It's almost like just a way of like hearing what's happening, hearing the distortion that you don't want in the final mix.
When you send it off to mastering, you're assuming that they're going to be smashing it, right?
Yeah, of course. Then it'll give them hopefully headroom, because once you remove that off, it won't be clipping anymore. Right. You'll just make sure it's all clean. So yeah.
Dope, man. That's a good pro tip. Hopefully everybody out there is taking notes.
Let's go. Write them down.
Let's go. Do you do a lot of parallel compression, like on a return track or like a mix bus? Do you usually slam things pretty hard?
I love parallel everything. Yeah. I parallel as much as I can. And so I don't know, whatever it is, like I'll a lot of times do the rack, the Ableton rack, and then do 2 channels in a rack, or 2, I guess they're channel. What are they?
Yeah, two chains.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry. 2 chains. I'll do those. I'll do the 2 chains in the rack. And so I used to do the thing where you would like make a crossfade and then like there's the thing where I'm so bad. I don't know the name of it.
No. Yeah. The chain selector.
Yeah. Like it looks like a timeline.
You can fade it between. Yeah.
But I also noticed there's a weird little phase sometimes when you get in the weird middle zone of that. So what I'll just usually do is do 2 chains and then fade in, have the dry chain usually, and then I'll fade in underneath what I need, parallel compression or distortion or whatever the effect is, like bring it in that way.
Sure.
It's weird. I don't use return tracks that much, and I need to use them more. And I've been trying to tell myself, especially when I get this new computer, try to use return tracks a lot more. But I do it all in each channel or in a group. I'll do the 2 chain thing. I don't know why.
Honestly, there's no right or wrong when it comes to that because there's so many different ways to do everything in Ableton. I think that's what attracts a lot of people to it because it's so creative in the workflow.
Yeah, man.
For sure. Get that right side of your brain stimulated.
Yeah. I have another chain tip. I'm going to just keep saying all the tips.
Do it, please. Bring all of them.
The best thing that I've found, I don't know why, I don't know what it is. It's like a psychoacoustic thing. But speaking of making 2 chains, I will make an audio effect rack. I'll make 2 chains and I'll split them left and right. So each of them has a left and a right. You can either do it on the chain itself, so it goes left and right, but that is after the processing. So it'll run through the processing and then it'll split it left and right. So what I'll usually try to do is put some sort of thing before all the processing. So probably a utility or I use Melda has a plugin called MXX, which is like all of their plugins. But if you just use the regular one, you can specify left and right. Either way, make a rack of left and right with a utility or something you can make it left and right in each of those chains. And then in one of the chains, maybe even like solo it, whatever, and EQ that side, do whatever you need to do effect wise, like get your sound to sound good on that left side, then unmute that or remove that and go back to the right side, do all of your adjustment on the right side. And then now have them both come back into stereo. You're going to like make weird little subconscious moves on each side that are different if you're hearing the reference material each way. And something about that gives it feels like width, but I call it depth. It feels like your mix is always deeper when you separate left and right. And also with left and right, what I'll do sometimes, I'll even do a limiter on left and right, or I'll do transient designers on left and right. Or we were talking about Isotope. I'll do like Isotope Neutron has a thing called Sculptor, which is like it analyzes the audio and it kind of EQs it to what it's doing. But the cool thing about that is the sound is coming through on the left and it's affecting whatever it's doing on that left from what it's hearing. And same with it's coming through on the right, it's affecting it. So those things are acting dynamically to the left and right channels, but it's creating this psychoacoustic, almost Haas effect. It's not a time delay. It's like a frequency difference. And that frequency difference in our ears feels like depth. It feels so much deeper. And it's such a cool way to like create some sort of movement. So your stuff just doesn't sound the same. Like it isn't being EQ'd left and right stereo every single time. So
see, that's really interesting. Yeah. Like creating those subtle differences in the left and the right field. I guess like I've always kind of been, I think, nervous to do that because I don't want to throw stuff way out of phase. But like if you can do it right, then yeah, like why not? That sounds wild.
But I don't, again, maybe someone can correct me on this. I don't think it will go out of phase because it's an exact left and right. Like each of those channels is going to be sending it. Maybe it will go out of phase if it once it hits the middle, but each of those is its own side being affected, and maybe it does go out of phase. I don't know, but to me it sounds so much more in depth. I don't know.
It and it's like
this. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say like it probably also depends if you're doing any kind of chorusing or other things on one side, the left or the right, because that could potentially spread that width even farther.
Yeah, true.
But
I don't know.
But yeah, it makes sense because like especially like in the world we live in, a lot of people listening in their car, like, you know, if you have good headphones, like it's the little subtleties I feel like that separates like one person's mix from another person's mix. Where it's like there's something different about that. Like it sounds more original.
Yeah, man. And how I found out about that technique was like old 70s producers used to do that. They used to like mono their mix and then they would EQ one whole side of the mix and then they would go and then go to the left and the right and they'd EQ each side differently. And then when they unmonoed it, it just felt so much deeper and more rich. And I saw it on some old dude's podcast a while ago. I was like, weird. And so I started doing it with Ableton, and especially the audio effect rack is like so good for that because you can do left and right within a channel. It's so dope.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Flux's plugins? Flux?
Yeah. They do Bittersweet and stuff like that.
They made one. I actually spoke with one of their product reps the other day. He was showing me a quick demo. I couldn't show you to save my life right now, but he showed me some Spat Revolution. It's for anybody who wants to get into like making Dolby surround sound kind of stuff.
Sick.
And you can like literally position. So it actually shows you a picture of like somebody's head, and you can do like 360 design on the insert of a track with the plugin so it's like a binaural crazy ear trick type of thing you could do with any sound.
Dude, I'm looking at it right now. This looks crazy.
It's wild. It's pretty wild stuff.
Wow. Yeah.
Spat Revolution is what it's called.
And it'd be cool if we could do that like pretty easily in Ableton and stuff. It'd be cool to like, from what it looks like, it's a 3D stage of where you can place your sounds, and it'd be so cool. I'm such a visual person that I would be like, man, I want these these hi-hats in like the upper left corner over here, and the snare here. It'd be kind of cool to do that.
Or to make like a kind of like a binaural effect where you feel like something is literally swirling around your head. Like in a 360 degrees, that kind of sensation, which is like ideal for, I think, the world that, we're going to be living in. Who knows, like 10 to 15 years, 20 years from now, people are going to be listening to music in VR, right? And so then that could be a whole different game changer for producers and how they make their mixes using something like this. And I know that Flux is even working with, they're not paying me to say this at all, but I know that they're working on like a Max for Live device to make that a lot easier for live users.
Dope.
Which would be, awesome. I'd be curious to see when that drops in the next year or two.
It's funny because I didn't even think about the metaverse side of what music will be too in that spatial audio, but like we could release a song, let's say, where like you start and forward and like you could actually like lean back and like more of the song could be revealed. Like we can make these songs that will actually like be dynamic to the user. Like it's like maybe a lot of times the cool thing about music is like, if you have a song that like you're like sad at some point in your life, and this song will resonate with you, and you'll almost like have a nostalgic moment every time you hear it moving forward. You have an emotional connection to that song. But what would be kind of cool with the VR side of things is you can actually like create the experience you have with that song in a different way. Like you could have your head up, down, turn left or right, and then that can actually affect you emotionally and like, I don't know, even the way that you perceive that song. It's kind of
definitely tight. No, it's going to be interesting, man. The whole metaverse thing, when that comes about and what that's going to look like. I think people are still trying to figure that out. But actually, that's a good segue into you creating your NFT. So you created an NFT that was like, what, a year ago or so?
April of 21. Yep, 2021.
Yeah, man. And that was a really cool concept. And I started seeing a lot of other artists dropping like their own NFTs. And I own a couple NFTs myself. I think cryptocurrency is really fascinating. We really haven't talked about it on this podcast much at all. Cool. And anybody who doesn't know anything about NFTs, quick preface, there's the Creative Juice podcast. They did one on NFTs that I sent out in the newsletter. And go listen to that. If you're like, I have no idea what an NFT is, go listen to that. Come back to this conversation because, I mean, basically, it's I think a great way for artists to connect with fans and get direct involvement with their fans and have their fans support you and also take ownership of the music for themselves so that everybody can benefit. And it's just a good one-to-one connection. But anyway, all that to say, like, what made you get into it? And maybe you can talk a little bit about this project. I think it's cool.
Yeah, so it started out with doing a little bit of like stock trading in crypto was kind of like the initial thing. I was like getting into that, just doing buying and selling, I don't know, coins and things like that. But in a lot of these group chats I'm in, they were talking about NFTs, and it was like during the pandemic, it was early pandemic, and we're like, oh, what is this? And like, we just kind of were like, shows were done, at least this is my path on it. Shows were done for a while. I didn't have a way of like creating experiences for fans. Like that's what I love doing in my shows, like creating these moments, creating these experiences. And I noticed with this NFT stuff, you could actually create an experience. Like we can make it so this is a way I could like actually do what I do at a show via the internet. I just noticed that like I could do the fun ways I release music and the ways that I do my shows in this like new space. The NFT space was like so new, so much fertile soil, and everyone was just so open and the community was open. And I said earlier in the podcast, but I actually have a tech degree. I have like a coding degree and a design degree. and I wasn't doing music at the time. And to be honest, like during the pandemic, it was hard to be inspired to make music. You couldn't go out to clubs and feel what the vibe is. And I just got inspired. Like that's all it was. It was like the main thing. I was like, wow, I can do this coding and I can figure this stuff out. Like with music too, I'm like, okay, what is going on right now? Okay, everyone's making tech house. I don't want to make tech house. I want to make something a little different. So same thing with this NFT thing. I'm like, okay, I did it early NFTs. Like this was before all the big PFP projects like Bored Ape and things like that. But I was like, okay, everyone's doing art, but there's like no way for physical artists. I realized like a lot of my friends who made physical art, they weren't really putting stuff on NFTs. So I was like, how can I make something that's physical to digital? How can someone mint an NFT with a physical device? And so I have these vapes. I'm showing it on camera right now for those who aren't watching it, but I have this vape that has like, I put Web3 technology on this little USB thing that charges it. So this charges the vape.
That's awesome.
It's so cool. It's like it charges the vape, but it also has Web3 tech on it. So when you plug it into your computer, it pulls up your MetaMask and makes sure you are an owner of the original NFT. And if you are an owner of the original NFT, it actually gives you, it mints another NFT to your wallet. So it's a physical to digital minting device. And what I did as well is there's only 3 of these that were made. And so once all 3 of them get plugged in, it actually alters their NFTs. If people are familiar with NFTs, there's like the Bored Ape project. They did a thing where they gave everyone a serum to like alter their ape. They could actually mutate their ape. So that's kind of what this was. And I did all of this before they even dropped Bored Ape in general. It was like this whole project to do that. And so wrapping all this up or whatever, I just love doing really cool experiential things in tech. Like I've always done that. Yeah. And this was like a space where I could do that in. And it isn't, to me, it isn't even really about the NFT itself. It's all about, there's a new technology. How can I find different ways to like use this new technology to do cool experiential things? And that's what this is.
Yeah. Well, absolutely, man. And like on top of that, I think it's a good one-to-one connection with your fans. Like people have Patreons, right?
Yes.
But when you subscribe, say, to your Patreon or another artist's Patreon, I don't necessarily have a sense of ownership of, say, music or of a product that is being offered by that artist. Yes. And so I think the NFT gives you that in a sense. Yeah. And my favorite NFTs, or I think the ones that are the most valuable, have some kind of like utility to them. Mm-hmm. So like you have the vape pen, like that's a utility, right? You could smoke it, whatever. And it's a good way to connect with your fans. They're thinking of you every time they're taking a puff. And it's a great connection there.
Yeah. And to support that, you're right. It is like that. It's like a Patreon, but it also feels like the old music industry when I grew up. Like I used to save up my money and buy a CD of an artist I really liked. And then when I got that CD, I got a physical thing and I was like, whoa, this is dope. There's really cool album artwork. I get to see the photos. I get to kind of experience a little bit more. But the main thing I did is we took my hard-earned money that I built up to support someone that I liked. And then they gave me something in return that was a tangible good that made me feel direct to fan to artist. And that was removed with streaming, I think. Like I saw a lot of my peers and especially younger artists come up and it's like, wow, you got 1 million plays on a Spotify playlist. That's so dope. Congratulations. And I'm so proud of you. But I'm like, they go to try to sell a show and no one's there because they got put on a hot playlist and they were cool and they were buzzy for a little bit, but there's the loss of the fan artist connection with streaming, which is cool. It has its benefits, but it also has its losses. It's hard to build a fan base through streaming. And so I think with this NFT stuff, there's a way to actually like start to build that fan base back, incentivize the fans who participate in supporting you as an artist.
That's really well said. That's a good way to put it, for sure. Just out of curiosity and being a crypto nerd myself, the NFT that you sold, what blockchain was that on?
So that was on Ethereum. Yeah,
Ethereum,
I did that one on Ethereum. And then I also did another thing where I wanted to just get people involved into NFTs. So I sold 420 editions of this one NFT for $4.20.
That's awesome.
And the cool thing with that one too is like, I just didn't want to give them an NFT and it's done. But if you visualize the audio of that, like an RX, let's say, if you take the audio of that and visualize it, there's actually a seed phrase to another crypto wallet. So if you like actually look at the audio waveforms, it shows all the waves of what the NFT is. And at the very end, in the audio hidden is written out a seed phrase. Yeah, it's written out a seed phrase. And then you can go to that wallet. And I made it so it's almost like a scavenger hunt. And we were doing it live on Clubhouse. We're like, people are like, oh, I think I got it. And like, one person found it and he came on and was like, oh, I found the NFT, and he was able to take it out the wallet. But he's like, I actually left another NFT for someone. So the next person that came along got
so
one.
Cool.
And then someone put Ethereum in there, and it became this like kind of like give a penny, take a penny exchange.
That's awesome.
And it made the NFT experience a little bit bigger than just like, oh, cool, I got this collectible item. It actually, there's like a memory, like the tangible moment that people experienced all together with this.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. Bringing that community together.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. So in the NFT space, like there's also some interesting ways other artists are using that. Like I saw the Chainsmokers, which I know you know them.
Yeah.
They ended up like minting, I think it was like 5,000 tokens. And then they ended up issuing those tokens to like their top fans that purchased like their merch or something. I don't know exact. They're offering all those 5,000 token holders 0.0002% of all streaming royalties that they're getting.
Yeah.
Which is wild. That's an interesting concept of being like, okay, if you're going to like, I'm going to invest in my 5,000 best fans, and then I'm also going to let them share in the pool of the royalties that I'm earning off of my music.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really interesting concept that I haven't really seen before.
Yeah. No, it's dope. And that's the thing that we're all doing right now. We're kind of trying to figure out how we can do this as musicians in this space. Like, how can we incentivize our fans? Like, for the people that are listening that are still maybe a little hesitant on NFTs, it's like, I'm sure they're part of like a frequent flyer program, or like they have a loyalty program at their local coffee shop or whatever it is. We've probably all been part of a loyalty program. Yeah. And I think that that's something that this NFT space is. Like, there's so much negative news around it and people hate on it. But like, if you strip away all of that and just look at it, there's like there's a lot of cool incentivization that can happen if you participate in this. And don't think of it as an NFT. It's almost just like a loyalty program. It's just like another way of doing a loyalty program.
Right. Well, and not just even that, but like I could sell part of the loyalty program that I own to somebody else.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So I invest in some artist and he's dope, but like he's on the up and up. And then like 5 years later, I own his NFT and I sell it off to somebody else. And that gives them like backstage passes and other special opportunities that somebody drips to their NFT holders. That has actual tangible value I could sell if I like broke and I go bankrupt because I bought too many MIDI controllers or something, you know?
Yeah, no, that's just true. And the cool thing is too, is like people are fans of someone like at a certain point of their life, but maybe they're not anymore. So that's another thing that I'm excited to see is like, I might be a Diplo fan until I'm 22. And I'm like, you know what? I don't like Diplo anymore. I'm going more into like down tempo stuff or whatever. I might have collected X amount of Diplo coins or whatever, and then I could then sell those to a new super fan of Diplo or exchange those for the new artist that I like. And then now that I can get incentivized to maybe get merch from them or whatever. So I'm really, really stoked to see what is to come with this. And I was going to also say too, like when I did this vape a year and a half ago, but I also started a company called LBRATD. It's spelled LBRATD. And we're building a ton of new technology, a huge thing for musicians. Like we're actually like been working really hard on a thing for musicians to actually be incentivized in Web 2 like they normally do, just like Spotify and Apple Music, in the ways that they get their Web 2 incentivization. But we also found a way to actually pair a Web 3 incentivization as well. So if you do want to participate in Web 3 NFT, whatever you want to call this right now, we actually found a way that you can get incentivized in both at the exact same time. If you choose to stay in Web 3, then or if you choose to use the Web 3 path, we can actually like connect to that and you can actually incentivize for your fans and yourself. So it's kind of both. It's both.
That's amazing. Is there a site up for that?
No, we're about to drop it soon though. So stay tuned. LBRATD is up though. You can go to LBRATD and we're doing a bunch of other NFT drops. We have a music drop going tomorrow that we're doing, and like we have a bunch of cool stuff. So yeah.
Sick, man. I'm fascinated by that. I really think that's the future.
My days, like this is so crazy, but my work schedule is on the weekends I go do shows, but when I come home, I'm full Web 3 building this company and doing all these other projects. Like, so I'm like 5+ days a week, Web 3 tech. And then like the weekends is just the EDM turn up stuff. It's kind of
very
wild.
Cool. Yeah. I've gone like deep into like liquidity pools.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Just learning about some of the interesting ones.
Yeah.
Theta is one that's really interesting as far as like bandwidth sharing, and they're building video for the metaverse basically.
Yeah,
so
man.
They're fascinating. I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
No, I have heard of them. No, it's so dope.
I'm a Theta nerd, but yeah, this is great, dude. I appreciate it, and I want to respect your time, so I don't want to hold you too much longer. But couple quick questions.
Yeah, man.
Like, as far as collaborating with other artists, do you have any like fun stories in the studio or even on stage, some collabs that you've done?
Let me try to see. So in the studio, so I have a song called Mosh Pit that came out, and it was like,
of course,
it's like a kind of a classic Turnt Up anthem or whatever. But when we worked with Lil Jon, so we made that song, and then Lil Jon hit us up because of that song, and he was like,
no way.
upset that like we didn't hit him up for that. He was like, man, I could have crushed that record. Why didn't I do that one? Why didn't like, he was like all like kind of angry. And we're like, well, dude, we have this new beat. Check out this. And we played him the Prison Riot beat. And he was like, whoa, this is so cool. Like what? And he was like getting turned up. And then he was just like,
awesome.
He had this like epiphany in the studio, at least a Lil Jon epiphany. And he's like, man, you guys know what's crazier than a mosh pit? I'm like, what's that, Lil Jon? What is crazier than a mosh pit? And he's like, motherfucking Prison Riot. And I was like, okay, dude, all right. And so he went into the booth, and that's what Prison Riot was. He like recorded the vocals to Prison Riot, and I think he is right. A Prison Riot is actually crazier than a mosh pit.
I would believe that. Yeah. I honestly would be kind of scared to be a part of one, but you know, I think I like to imagine that Lil Jon is always yelling at you, like just in a regular conversation.
He isn't yelling, but he's definitely lit. He's like, he's probably in his 50 something, but he has like the soul of a teenager, like in his old age.
That.
It's so cool, man. And he still drinks. Like he's turning up drinking half a bottle of 1942 every night. I'm like,
still going hard.
I do not understand how he could be his age and doing it, but he loves it.
That's funny. Yeah, get more power to him, man. I'm 34 and I'm like getting tired, you know, around 9:30 p.m. now.
Yes.
That's hilarious. I mean, you've worked with a lot of OGs in the hip hop world. Like Waka Flocka is another one.
Yeah, man. I toured with him for a while too. We did like a whole summer together, pretty much, like summer camp with Waka Flocka, and
that's dope.
Went to some shady strip clubs with him late night. It was just, I've got a lot of, I don't know if it's Ableton sensitive podcast stuff.
This is a non-censored podcast. Anything goes.
Cool. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. There's been some wild nights with Waka. He's the homie. And he's another person with like such a youthful energy. He's like a big kid. He's 7'12". I don't know how tall he is. He's the biggest dude ever.
Really?
And he acts like, have you ever seen like when like a big dog thinks they're a little dog and they're all hyper and that's what Waka Flocka is in real life. He's like, he seems like he's like this little kid with like little energy, but he's like the biggest dude ever.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's great, man. I love that energy. It definitely shows. You kind of have to if you're going to be in that genre and you're like your own hype man, you know?
Oh yeah, man. Oh yeah. He gets in the mosh pit, he gets in the crowd, and yeah, man, it's wild.
That's really funny. Yeah, like I've seen like some iPhone videos and stuff of like Shaq trying to crowd surf.
No way.
Everybody's like, oh shit.
Dude, he went on top of a crowd?
Yeah, he like crowd surfed once. I think it happened like once. But he's funny. He's a big dude if you've ever seen him in real life.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I've met him a few times.
He was on a plane the first time I saw him, and I was in first class. I walked by him and he like took up all 3 seats just chilling. Yep. Yeah, it's the nicest guy ever though. Like he's super cool. I actually heard a really funny story. It's completely off topic, but like about him is Adam Sandler was telling a story about how he saw his penis once.
Yes, I've heard that.
Did you see that?
It's so good.
This is like completely off topic, but anyway, like they were shooting a movie or something, and he walked into the locker room, and Shaq was showering in between takes. And he walks up and the bodyguard was there, Shaq's guard, and he's like, I can't let you in here, man. And he's like, I just wanted to see Shaq's penis. He's like, I can't let you do that. So he left and he's like, oh man, this is really awkward now. Now Shaq's bodyguard is going to tell him that I walked in to do that. And so now I have to confront him because otherwise it's going to be weird when he walks out here and he's like staring me down. So he like comes out and Shaq walks up to him. He like walks up and he's like, hey man, how's it going? I walked up to your bodyguard. He's like, what are you talking about? I don't have a bodyguard. That was my penis.
Yes.
Not all ages appropriate, but it's fine. Yeah.
I guess you said, I wish you would have opened with that because I would have known the bar of what the Ableton podcast can be.
No, it's fine. Yeah. 18 and up advised.
All right.
No, it's cool. Yeah, man. Well, that's good. Some good stories. I guess like, just to respect your time, we should probably close this out soon, but what advice would you give, I guess, to other producers out there in the electronic music scene or whatever, just trying to hustle and make music?
Yeah, if you're starting to learn, if you're beginning, I would say maybe like copy some artists that you like just to understand the way it is. But once you kind of get a grasp on how to make music or whatever you're trying to do, just try to, I guess, define what your sound is. So if you like dubstep and you like jazz, try to make a version of what dubstep jazz sounds like. Who knows? Yeah. Don't just try to copy what the current trend is, because by the time you make what's the hot thing, it's not going to be hot anymore. So if you're trying to make the current hot thing, why don't you try to invent the next hot thing? And yeah, and that also being said too, if you're trying to go for success, like if you're like, oh, I want to be the biggest DJ ever, like, that's good and all, that's great for motivation too, but just try to do what's genuine to you, because then that will come. Like if you lead with, I want to be the biggest dude ever, that's good for motivation, lighting that fire, but like just really try to lead with, I want to make something unique and show it off to people. And I think then the thing that you want of being the next biggest thing will come to you. Yeah. My two cents on it.
No, that's awesome advice, man. Seriously, I appreciate that. And I know everybody else out there is probably loving this episode. There's a lot of good stuff to share with people, and you've been doing it for super long. So yeah, appreciate what you do. Music's dope. Hoping there's more coming out. Also, one of my best friends, Connor, huge fan, and he was asking if there's another Troy Boi collab in the works ever.
It's so crazy. We were talking about it the other day. I played my first show with him in years. We did a thing at EDC. They had a lineup. It was Troy Boi, G.T.A, Yellow Claw, and me. It was like all the old
I
OG
remember
trap
that
people.
Actually.
And the vibe was so dope. It was like such a cool thing. A lot of my friends that actually went to EDC said that they had more fun at that, whatever. It was like a really good vibe. But I caught up with Troy. We were talking about it. We're like, we got to do like a Soundclash 2.0 or something, because that's like one of my favorite songs. And
Same.
It's like, it just, the collab worked really well. It happened, like all the songs that I've ever put out that took no time to make, like it just was a vibe and it was done. Those are like my biggest songs, seriously. Like the ones where I'm sitting here EQing for fucking 17 years, those are never as big. And that Troy Boi collab was one of them. The two was that Original Dawn was made in like 20 minutes, just added some trap drums to the original Dawn as like a quick little edit thing, and it blew up. And then the Troy Boi one too is the same thing. It was like, made an idea, he came back with a little bit, we bounced it back and forth, and it was done. And like, it took longer to mix it on my end, mix and master it, than it took to actually create it. So okay. I hope we can vibe out again. Like we were talking about it, he lives in Miami, so next time I'm out there, we'll get up and we'll see what happens.
Do it, man. I know I'm not the only one, or Connor, that wants to see that happen. So
we all
yes,
want it.
Please. Man. We all want it.
He's sick.
Give the people what they want.
Yes, sir.
Hell yeah, dude. I appreciate your time. Thanks again for hanging out on the podcast. Everybody, if for some rare occasion you have not heard Flosstradamus' music, then you need to go do him and yourself a service now. Go stream it. Go check out his music. Check out the links in the show notes. As always, I'll include all of his socials down there. Last but not least, where's the best place for people to connect with you online?
My most interactive spot is Instagram, but if you want to see anything else, just try to Google Flosstradamus. It'll fix it, and click the first link. That's usually where I'm at. Yeah.
Awesome, dude. Right on, man. Have a good night. I'll see you eventually. I'll post this and send it to your people. So like 2 weeks or so. Let me know. I'm excited to hear it, and I'll promote it and all that junk. Dude, I appreciate you. Have a good week. Appreciate you. Yeah, you too. Later. Bye. Yee. Hey, once again, huge thanks to Flosstradamus for hanging out on this episode. Make sure you guys go give him a like, a follow, check out his latest tunes. Also wanted to remind you about that special deal with Lander if you're interested in getting help from the beginning to the end of the process, whether it's mastering, whether it's some new effects and plugins, whether it's collaboration in the studio. They have all kinds of different products and services. Go check that out. There's a link in the show notes. Use that discount code LANDR.com. Go give Lander some love. Last but not least, don't forget about that music producer giveaway I mentioned at the beginning of the episode. You can win up to $6,000 in prizes from some great companies like Output, Sonarworks, Belize, and Loop Community. Win some plugins and MIDI controllers, which is always a beautiful time. So check that out. Go to liveproducersonline.com/win. That's liveproducersonline.com/win. Check back for new episodes on Tuesdays. Much love to all of you for listening to the podcast. Go make some bangers, and I will see you in the next episode.